So you don't have a macOS machine and you want to build your Unity game for iPhone. Should you use a virtual machine? That's a very good question. Today I'm going to share with you my experience on exactly doing that. Hey guys, as some of you know, I've been working on a video game for the past 3 months. It's a little fun puzzle adventure game called Mr. X. On my laptop I have Ubuntu and I use my Android phone to test my game. And everything works fine. At this point I'm releasing my game for alpha and I was thinking I should start building for iPhone. One of the benefits of using Unity game engine is that you can build your game for different platforms, whether it be a PC, console, Android, iPhone, or even there is a web player, so you can have your game on a website. As I started researching how to build my Unity game for iPhone, I realized I need a macOS machine. Since my main laptop has Ubuntu on it, I had 3 options. One would be to buy an Apple hardware, like an iMac or a MacBook. The second option would be to install macOS on my main laptop alongside Ubuntu. The third option would be to use a virtual machine. Now, before I tell you my experience with using the third option, the virtual machine, let me go through the pros and cons of each method. And that way, if you are in the same situation, you can make your decision based on those pros and cons. And these pros and cons apply to my specific situation. Take them as they are. So the first way is to buy an Apple hardware. And the benefits of this method is that first, you will have access to both OSs at the same time, and they run on their own hardware, so it's the fastest way of having both at the same time. And second, this is the official way of having a macOS machine. Apple, unlike Microsoft and Google, don't care much about the interoperability of their OS with different hardware, and they basically design macOS around their own hardware. So you will find a lot of issues when you try to install macOS on non-Apple hardware. On the con side, it costs you money. You have to pay to buy the additional hardware. And also, this setup is not going to be portable. Now, this might not be a big issue for most people. For me, since I like to travel a lot and I also like to go to coffee shops to work sometime, I don't want to carry 2 laptops with me. So the second option is to install macOS alongside Ubuntu on my laptop. The pros with this method is that it is portable. I can take my laptop anywhere and use the OS I want anytime I want to. And secondly, it's cheaper than option 1. I don't need to buy an Apple hardware. The problems with this method is that first, this setup is called a Hackintosh. Any machine that runs macOS and is not Apple hardware is called a Hackintosh. And as I mentioned, the compatibility of Apple with different hardware, you're bound to find some weird issues with this setup. And secondly, while you have both your OSs on the same machine, to switch between them, you would need to reboot your machine. And that kind of wastes your time because you continuously have to go through the boot cycle. And also, you will lose all your running applications. If you're like me and have a lot of applications open at once, this is not going to work well because you will keep losing your applications every time you need to use macOS. Now the third option is to use a virtual machine or a VM. A VM is a piece of software that lets you emulate other hardware. Basically, it lets you install another OS, in this case macOS, inside of your main OS, in my case Ubuntu. Now the benefits with this method is that it is cheap, you don't need to buy additional hardware. Some of the virtual machine software out there costs you money. I'm going to use VirtualBox, which is free and open source. The second benefit is that you can access macOS without affecting your Ubuntu applications. You can boot up macOS, run your applications, and then shut it down. And your Linux applications will not get affected. Now, there are 2 drawbacks to this method. First, the macOS is going to run very slowly because you're emulating the hardware for it. And I mean very, very slowly. And this can be really frustrating if you're going to use macOS often. But in my case, since I'm just going to use it to build my game, it's going to be okay. The second drawback is that it is again a Hackintosh system, and you're bound to find some weird issues with your setup. I put all these three methods and their pros and cons in a single table. Again, this should help you with your decision making in case you're in the same situation and you're deciding what to do to get a macOS running. For me, it seemed that going with a virtual machine makes a lot of sense. I don't have to spend any money, I don't care about the bad performance, and the technical problems seem to be the real problem. And since I'm a Linux user, I kind of saw that as a challenge and it didn't scare me at all. With that, let's go into my story of running a virtual machine that runs macOS. It took me a few days to bring up a macOS virtual machine. There were a lot of hacky things that I needed to do. First, I needed to convert the installation file from a Mac application into the ISO format, which I could use with VirtualBox. After that, the virtual machine wouldn't boot and even the graphics would get garbled. So after doing some research, I realized I had to find the right settings in VirtualBox that would work for macOS. And also from the terminal, I had to set some CPU flags that would allow the macOS to boot. After I could get the macOS to boot, I had to install Unity and build my game. And there were a few issues here, but nothing too serious. One weird problem was that one time I started getting a file sharing violation when I was building in Unity. And after doing some research, it turned out to be that I was using an exFAT file system. What? Hackintosh. So what I did was to format it to HFS Plus, and boom, my game was built. Yes, my game was finally built for iPhone. I was so happy at this point. I was about to cry, and I even made a post on Instagram about the successful build. And for 5 minutes, I was the happiest person on earth. But that didn't last long. 5 minutes later, I realized that building for iPhone in Unity doesn't quite mean what it should. What Unity does is to build you another project for Xcode. Xcode is the main IDE for development on macOS. So what I ended up doing is to install Xcode in my virtual machine, open my project, try to build it. And at some point during the process, it asked me to connect my iPhone. And remember that macOS is running inside my Ubuntu, and the way to connect a USB device to your macOS is to use a USB filter in VirtualBox. When I tried to make a USB filter in VirtualBox, it just didn't work for the iPhone. I banged my head against the wall for a day, tried everything I could think of, tried all the settings that was possible, and I couldn't figure it out. So after failing for a whole day, I made a thread in the forums for VirtualBox and included all the information I could get about my setup. And after a day, I received a very useful comment from the community which changed the trajectory I was going. Now let's take a look at the answer here. Running a macOS guest, aka Hackintosh, under a Linux host on non-Apple hardware is not supported, and also a violation of Apple's end-user license agreement. And this seems to be a common problem when you run macOS virtual machines. At this point, I decided to give up on the idea of having a macOS virtual machine. This goes against my natural tendency to push through and find a solution at all costs. Linux users out there will relate to this mentality more. But I was spending just too much time on solving these small problems rather than working on my game. So going back to the question in the title of the video, if you want to build using a macOS virtual machine, it is technically possible, but it is going to be very cumbersome. I think if I spent more time on the USB filter problem, I would be able to resolve that. But I just decided to not go that way. And remember, this whole thing might be in violation of Apple's terms of use. So I would generally recommend against using a macOS virtual machine. So in the end, I decided to go with option 1 and buy me an iMac. I went on eBay and found something nice that was also reasonably priced. It actually arrived today. I have it here in the box. I'm yet to unpack it and set it up. Once I do that and get my application to build for iPhone, I'm going to post another video. So be sure to check back on my channel to see how the iPhone build is going for my game. I also want to note that there are these online services that let you use macOS virtual machines in the cloud, and they usually charge you by the number of hours that you need your virtual machine. For me, I'm going to be using my Mac machine a lot and build a lot of applications, so it seemed like a reasonable investment to just buy an iMac. I just wanted to put it out there that there is another way also to try a macOS virtual machine. I hope you enjoyed watching my video. In case you don't know me, my name is Hossein and I'm making a puzzle adventure game called Mr. X. I post regular updates about my progress with the game, about Unity, and about game development in general. If you're interested in those, make sure to follow my YouTube channel and my Instagram page. If you want to support my work, you can go to my Patreon page. I have linked all of those down in the description below. Thank you for watching, and see you around. A virtual machine is when you